Hey everyone, welcome to this particular video of contributing to AWS Amplify CLI. In the previous video, we talked about how easy it is to go ahead and make a contribution to the Amplify JavaScript library. And just a quick recap about the Contributor Bash. We recently launched this bash to show you how easy it is to get involved with AWS Amplify by making open source contributions to the Amplify project, get engaged with the team members, and also go ahead and build a portfolio for yourself through the contributions. This particular site talks about the best practices about contributions and how we can get started with some of the few first issues and the rewards and recognition around the same. Let's go to Amplify CLI. The Amplify CLI is an integrated toolchain that allows you to create, integrate, and manage AWS resources and stitch them with the Amplify front-end libraries. Now, if you go to the Amplify CLI repo on GitHub, there are a set of instructions on how you can get your local environment set up. You need to have certain prerequisites, which is Node.js bundled with npm installed so that you can go ahead and install or upgrade yarn. So let's go ahead and check what version of Node we're running. So we're running Node 16. And what version of npm? We're on 8.x. And the version of yarn is 1.x. We also say that if you're using yarn version 2, just go ahead and run this particular command. But since we're not using 2, we should be good. So the first basic step is to go ahead and fork the Amplify CLI repo on the master or the main branch. So let's go ahead and fork this. It should take a few seconds. And once this is complete, it should say that the branch is up to date with the Amplify master, and you can go ahead and clone this to your local environment. So I'm just going to run a git clone. We'll just give this a couple of seconds. And once this is complete, let's go back to our contributing guide, and we can cd into the directory and run the yarn setup dev script. So let's go ahead and do that. So it'll take a few minutes. So the setup dev script tried to run, but it failed in between, saying that it could not find any references to remove underscore cv underscore t. This is typically an error with the underlying C++ compiler and the way it interacts with Node 16. You have two options. Before that, you wanted to check the C++ version. This happens when the version is less than 14. So you can either downgrade the version of Node to Node 14 to get this working, or you can go ahead and run a workaround. I'm going to run a workaround for the CXX flags, and I'm going to say std equals C++ 17, and I want to force this for the setup dev script. So let's run this and see if it builds. We'll give it a few minutes. Okay, so this completed successfully, and there was no errors this time. And you can also run a git status just to make sure that the branch is up to date with master. And I was also trying to go ahead and look at the package.json file. If you're starting with development fresh, you can see what the setup f and dev script does. And it actually runs this particular command as it steps through the script. And I did go ahead and open the Amplify CLI project. The Amplify CLI is a monorepo that's built with the Yarn workspaces and Learner. So you can actually see the packages of the monorepo, and then you can individually go into each and every one of these categories and have a look at the source code. Now, in this particular case, we'll see how easy it is to make a contribution to the auth category. So if you go into the Amplify category auth, you can surf through the code to see the provider utils folder and the AWS CloudFormation resources underneath. But let's just go to the source folder, and you can actually see the commands that's there for auth. So this basically is equivalent to Amplify auth add, console, enable, import, override, etc. And if you actually go into the utils folder, or I should say the provider utils folder under AWS CloudFormation, there are a few assets. And one of the assets is the string maps to go ahead and display the messages on the CLI. So let's say if you're trying to add an auth resource to a project where the auth already existed, then you're going to get this default message. And for the purposes of this video, let's just assume that this message is not intuitive enough. So let's just say if auth already existed, I also want to see what the existing auth resource looks like. So in this particular case, I'm just going to add a string saying that auth has already been added into this project. To view the current status, run amplify status -v to update run amplify update auth. Now, before I go ahead and save this file, I do need to create a new branch to start working off of it. And if you look at the guidelines of Amplify, we always say that go ahead and create a new branch, and the branch naming conventions need to follow specific guidelines. For example, if you're working on the auth category, you will start the branch naming convention with the category-auth. So let's just go ahead and do that. Without saving this file, let's just copy the string that we wanted to add and close the file. Don't save this. And then let's go ahead and create a new branch. Now, creating the new branch can be done from your shell, or you can directly do it from VS Code. I prefer doing it from VS Code, but it's up to the preferences of the user. Category of an auth, add debug message auth exists. So let's try to name it with a convention that is easy enough for the team to be able to understand what we're trying to do with this particular PR. So let's just go ahead and create a new branch, and then you should see the branch change. And now let's go into the stringmaps.js file, and let's add the message and then save the file. Now that we have made our changes, the next step is to go ahead and build. Now you can build it towards a specific scope. So we can say yarn build -- scope at AWS Amplify / Amplify category -auth. This avoids the overhead of building the entire project. And once this completes, we should be good to write a test. Now, if you're starting off from scratch like how I am, then you will see that there is a tests folder. Now, in the backend, we use Jest, which is a JavaScript testing framework, and you'll be able to see that there is tests for different commands like enable, import, override, remove, and update. If you're new to testing like how I am, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to inspect a test file for enable.ts, and there are two different use cases for the enabling auth. And if you look at the test case that's been worked out here, there are two cases. One is the case where auth is already enabled, and the second case is the auth has not been enabled yet. And if you see the test case that has auth already enabled, you are expecting the mock context to print a warning that says that from the messages, you need to carve out the auth exists property, and then you need to print that out. And that is going to bring us to the string map of auth exists. So this particular test case is close enough to where I would like to start. And note that this is again going to help you out if you're starting off from scratch. And if you're modifying any other category or any other implementation, you will need to write test cases for the same. So rather than modifying this particular file, I'm going to go ahead and copy this and create a new file that says auth exists.test.js, and I'll go ahead and paste this. I do not need the second test case because this only works if auth already existed in this specific project. So I'm going to save this file and then go back. In order for us to go ahead and run the test locally, we can go into the specific category and source folder. I think it was underscore tests and commands, and we can just say yarn test auth exist.js, and if you see just encountered an unexpected token, this usually means that there is a problem with the command. So I looked at multiple different error logs like the yarn-error.log, and I realized what my mistake was. I've been so used to naming files as .js files because I typically start with React projects. The test file had to be .ts file. So let's go ahead and rename that to .ts and then run the test again. Okay, now that this has been named to .ts, VS Code also recognize that this is a TypeScript file and applied all the linting and color coding to it. So let's see if we can run the test again. And just for testing purposes, I was testing enable.test.ts, and that's how I figured out what the problem was. So let's run this and see if that works well with the test cases that we have had. Let's give it a minute. Okay, so you can see that the test suite has passed, and both the test cases, there's one test suite um, with two different tests that has successfully passed, and now we should be good to go. So after testing is done, they ask us to go ahead and test it in a sample app using Amplify-dev, and this is going to be our two actual tests in an app. So let's go back and let's go to a Amplify project that has been initialized with auth, and let's go back to the guide, and they ask us to run amplify-dev in it. So let's initialize the project. Should take a few seconds before it loads up, and I want to use an existing environment. It's the same environment. I'm just reinitializing the dev environment within the same project. This is not going to impact your already initialized Amplify init parameters. So once it's initializing the dev environment, we should be able to go ahead and run the category and the subcommand that we actually made changes for. So amplify-dev auth add, and this should bring up the new message that we just added in. All right, there you go. So auth has already been added to this project. To view the current status, run amplify status -v, and to update, run amplify update auth. Just to test, you can run amplify auth add, which is the production version, which should be using the category that you specified within the project, and you should be receiving the default message without the line that we have just added. Now, while this runs, all that we have to do, I think it just came back, so you can just see that there's no changes here. Now, all you have to do is go here and commit the changes. You can just say amplify messages, and you can do a publish of the branch to publish it to the origin. And once it's been published to the origin, you should be able to see that you get an option to compare and create a PR. And then once you go ahead and do this, you should be able to modify the messages and put a description of your changes and all the tests that you have actually created. And say that the yarn test passes and the description has been included for the team to be able to successfully merge the valid PR. Thanks for watching again, and hope this encourages everyone to go ahead and contribute to Amplify CLI and how easily you can get started. Signing off. Thank you.